everyone to another study session with KP. I'm KP, and today we'll be doing pseudocode to flowchart. We're converting pseudocode to flowchart. So we're doing some practice, right? Now we're doing a while loop, and this version of the while loop is condition control. What does that mean? It means the loop is controlled by a condition, right? You will continue performing the loop based on a condition, right? So again, use our tip where we're going through each line to determine what the symbol will be represented as in the flowchart. The first line, as we know it, start is a terminator. Total equal. So we see the equal sign, we know that's a process. Input number, that's an input output, and I'm representing it as I/O. While number is not equal to 0. That is a decision. That's like a question you're asking, right? Decision box. Here, total equal. This is a process. Input number, input here, another input output. The end loop, and then there's a print. Print is an input output, and we have the terminator. Right? So once you've done that, now let us translate this into flowchart. So we have our start, and that goes in an oval. Then our flow lines, total equals 0. That's a process. It goes into a rectangle. Total equals 0. Then we have our input-output box where it should say input number. So input variable number. And that's a parallelogram. See, it looks like a parallelogram. Next line is a decision, right? The decision is a check. So we're going to check number not equal to 0, and that's like a question. Is number not equal to 0? Right? While number is not equal to 0, we're going to go in here, which means it's a yes, right? If it's yes, and we're going to have a no as well. So let's work on the yes. If it's yes, what are we going to do? We have the total, which goes in a process. So total equal to total. I hope you guys are able to understand what I'm writing here. Total plus number. And that goes in a process, which is a rectangle. Next line is an input output, which is getting the number, input, number, and that goes into a parallelogram. And our flow lines, can't forget our lines, because that shows you the direction of flow. And once we reach there now, we're going to go back up to the top of the loop and ask the question again. All right? Now, when it's no, what is going to happen? You're going to exit the loop. When it's no, this is where you're going. So you're going to print. So you're going to have a print, which is a parallelogram. So you're going to print total. Right? And that goes into a parallelogram. After you print, you're going to stop. So where should I put this? Let's put stop here. We're going to stop. And that goes in an oval. All right? So we've captured all our lines for this pseudocode and represented it as a flow chart. Let's do another one. Let's do another one. Applying the same tip here. So we'll be doing a repeat loop, condition control. And as I said, that what that simply means is that the loop is controlled by a condition which tells when you should repeat the loop. It's a condition, and we do it until the condition is true. So we do applying the same steps again, where we're going to go through the pseudocode and determine what symbol in the flowchart it represents. So this is a terminator. Hold on, fix that. So this is the terminator. Process. There's some equal sign. We're doing something. It's a process. Now we don't have anything in the flowchart that represent the word repeat, so we skip this line, right? We'll see further down how we represent the repeat loop. Next line is our input output. Total, that's a process. No, and now we're at the end of the loop where it says until number is equal to 0. And that is where the decision is being made, where the test is being done for the repeat loop. The next line says print, which is our input output. And then we stop, which is terminator. So let's draw a flow chart. So we have start, and that goes into an oval. Our flow line, next line is a process. We say total is equal to 0, and that goes into a rectangle. Input is the next one. We have an input that goes into a parallelogram. So we're going to input number that goes into a parallelogram. Next is a process. Total equal total plus number. And that's process, which is a rectangle. Until number equals 0. Now that is the decision that goes into a decision box. So we say number equals 0, and I put a question sign so it visually we can understand that it's asking a question. So that goes into a diamond, the decision box, right? The decision box says yes or no. So we know with a repeat loop, we exit when the condition is true. That's the difference with, that's one of the difference between it and a while loop. We exit when the condition is true. So for this one, where the loop will happen when the condition is false. So when we say no, let me put no here, right? No, that's when we go back up. That's when we go back up to the top of where the loop began. And if it is yes, Yes says print total, which is an input output, which is a parallelogram. So print total parallelogram, and then we stop, and that goes in an oval. So just remember, when you're doing a repeat loop, you're only repeating this section when the condition is false, right? When it is no, right? You exit when it is true, right? When it is true, you exit. So that's it for the repeat loop. Let's do another one. So for this one, we're doing a while loop, which is counter control, and counter control simply means that the loop will repeat a set number of times and then it stops. So it's controlled by a number of times. So in this example, right, we see where we're counting from 1 and we're going up to 4, because we're going to stop once we're going to stop once count is bigger than 4, right? So let's do our first tip, which is to go through each line of the pseudocode and try to determine what symbol in the flowchart it represents. So our start here, as we know, start is terminator. Now, some of the examples or some of the questions they may give you may not see this word. They might give you a snippet and tell you to draw this as a flowchart, but you must always include start in your flowchart. All right, don't forget it. And stop. So we have a terminator, we have an equal sign here, or we have an equal sign here. So we'll put that in a process, right? While count is less than or equal to 4, that is a decision. We have a decision happening here. Print, that's an input, output. Input, that's an input, output. Total equal, that's a process, right? And this is a process, and I'm keeping these separate for you to see clearly what is happening with the counter control loop. Move on to the other line. Print is an input, output, and then we stop, which is a terminator. All right, so let's draw our flow chart. So we have a start, and that goes in an oval. Our flow lines, don't forget our flow lines, it always shows you the direction. So we have a process box, which is going to be a rectangle. So process box have count equal 1, total equals 0, and that goes in a rectangle. While, now that's where the decision is happening. We have a while count is less than or equal to 4, and that's a question, right? Put the question sign so we can visually see and understand and be reminded that's a question that requires a yes or no or true or false. So if it's yes, we do what is inside the loop, yes. And if it's no, we do what is outside. So if it's yes, we're going to print, right? Print, enter, mark for test. And that was an input output, which is a parallelogram. Might not look like it here, but it's a parallelogram, right? Next one is an input output, same parallelogram. This one is an input, so usually separate the input. So we have input, test, keep them separate. And that goes in a parallelogram. Next is a process. Total. Total is equal to total plus test. And that goes in a process, which is a rectangle. Right. Next one is a count, right? Count is equal to count plus 1. Now, this is the counter, right? This is the counter that is controlling the loop. This one. So once that is done, it moves back to the top of the loop, right? Where it asks the question again. Is count less than, this is U, is count less than or equal to 4? Yes, and we complete these steps again. Now, if it's no, that's where we're going to print, and that goes in our input output where we say print total marks. All right, and we print the total. That goes in a parallelogram. And then we will stop, and I put in stop up here. Right. All our lines are represented. We've captured it, right? We have count, we have the process, our decision box, our input, output, output again. Then we have a process for the total, a process for the counter, and we'll go back up to the top of the loop. So that's for a while loop control, counter control, right? So just for you to see it better, I have it here, right, in a drawn up diagram. So see it hold better, right? And it's the same thing, right? So let's look at another one. So here we have the repeat loop, and it's counter control. And again, we say counter control, which simply means that the loop is controlled by a counter, right? And it will run for a certain number of time, right? So we'll be doing the same tip where we go through each line and we try to identify what symbol it represents in the flowchart, right? For this one, so again, we have start, and we know start is the terminator, right? So we have a terminator here. Count equal 1 and process, and total equal 1. We say those are processes, so that's going into the process box. Repeat is not represented. That word is not represented in the flowchart. So we move to the next line. Print, input, output. Input, as it says, so input, output. Total, we're doing a calculation. Process. Count equal 1. That's a process, and that is where the loop is. That's a counter for the loop. And we have until count is greater than 4. That's a decision, right? Decision. Print total marks, total. That's an input, output, and then we end with a terminator, right? So those are the symbols that we're expecting in the flowchart. So let's look at it. All right. So here we're seeing the flowchart. Let me adjust this so you see all of it, right? So here we're seeing the flowchart and we're seeing all the lines represented in the flowchart, right? We're seeing that we have our start, we have our count, right? These two processes, right? We have, this is not represented. We have our print, input, test, total, count, right? So those two are processes. We have our input, output boxes, our decision box, sorry, and our print, right? And remember, with a repeat loop, we only exit the loop when the condition is true, right? So you will see the repeat happening when it is false. We have our stop, and that's the repeat loop represented as in flowchart. The end of this practice session. I hope you guys learned something, and keep practicing. Our exams are right around the corner, right? It's next week, Friday. So see you guys in another study time with KP. Bye.